Gentlemen, welcome to the second installment of unbelievably the 7th year of the Dutchess County Historic Tavern Trail. My name is Will Tatum. I am your Dutchess County historian, and I am, thank you very much, exceptionally delighted to introduce tonight's speaker. Sarah Hermans is one of our foremost genealogists and historians of Northern Dutchess. She is going to be sharing with you the story of a 19th century opera singer at least equal to, if not greater in prominence than Taylor Swift. And we'll also be asking for your generous donations to underwrite a monument marking the burial spot of this individual, Madam Anna Bishop. It is a multimedia presentation tonight with a little opera. So without further ado, and if I can manage to not trip over my own equipment, I'm going to switch places with Sarah. Give her a round of applause.
Bear with me, I've never done one with a clicker before. Oh my god, high tech. Yeah, so welcome. Thank you guys for having me. First of all, anybody in the room, has anyone heard of Madam Anna Bishop before Historic Red Hook started? Tatum, you don't count. Anybody else? Nobody.
Us.
You. Yes, you, of course. If you aren't opera adjacent, you probably haven't. She, despite her being mega famous for 175 years, she's buried in the Lutheran Cemetery in Red Hook without a proper gravestone. In 1877, a reporter noted, "Living memories do not go back to the time when Madam Bishop was not singing somewhere. She has met with every adventure and accident to human nature, except being swallowed by a whale." She made 3 world tours in the age of steam. Her career spanned 6 decades, and she performed for royalty and on 6 different continents. She was known for her high and brilliant voice, enormous facility, and wide-ranging repertoire as an operatic soprano. She's all but forgotten now, but we're hoping that by getting her a gravestone with her name on it, she will be remembered for a long time to come. So let's get to know Anna Bishop and why she is so important to Red Hook. We're going to start with Anna Riviera. I'm pronouncing that wrong. She was born in London in 1810 to wealthy parents. She learned the piano early on, but it was established pretty quickly that her voice was exceptional, so she switched to voice and focused on that. She was born in 1810 when George III was King of England. You know, the guy from Hamilton. She would hear this song called Home Sweet Home, she says, before she met its composer, Henry R. Bishop. She was young. She was in the music scene in London. He was in the music scene in London. His wife died. A month later, he married her. She was 21, he was 44. They would go on to have 3 children. Rose was born in 1833, and Johanna and Augustus were twins, born in 1837. She's in the music scene in London. She meets a lot of famous people, including this gentleman. This is, I'm going to pronounce it wrong, Robert Nicolas Charles Basha. Sure? Basha. We're going to call him Basha because it's easy. He is the harpist. If you think of like a musical instrument, I was going to look it up. Yo-Yo Ma cello? Is that it? Okay. If Yo-Yo Ma's the cello guy, he's the harp guy. He performed for Napoleon, for royalty. He taught Josephine how to play the harp. He's the guy. So she meets him. She's performing. She's performed about 8 years or so, and she would then make her operatic debut, what she considered her operatic debut, in 1839 at Her Majesty's Theatre in London. And her, at the time, was Victoria, who she sang in the chorus of at her coronation. Pretty cool. So in 1839, she heads out on a tour of Europe. Supposedly, she escaped alleged unkind treatment by Bishop. That's alleged. We don't know if that's for sure, but she certainly had dreams that being a housewife in London wasn't going to settle for that, and headed out for a tour instead. This was a huge scandal because she left with Basha. So we're going to do a little map game here, kids. This is a modern map. I apologize. It has modern political boundaries and names. They weren't like that in the 1830s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s when she was performing and traveling. And also we're going to show you that it has, it's going to be Indiana Jones style with the lines showing you where she went. They are as the crow flies and not as the boat sails. I don't know where her boat went. So bear with, I just want to show you how well-traveled a woman this is. So we have some points of interest. London, we have New York, we have Sydney, Australia, and we have this spot in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, which you may have been spoiled for by the fact that I put flyers out. But we'll get to why it's important in a bit. From England, she goes to Sweden, then on to Denmark, Russia, Moldova, Austria, Hungary, and on to Bavaria, Germany, Bavaria, which was a monarchy at the time, then back into Russia to Tatarstan in 1842. Particularly was interesting because she supposedly sang a song in Tartar, which was something normal people didn't really do. They didn't break out a song in the language of the people that she was performing for, especially because she was there. And something apparently that she did everywhere, significantly easier if you're performing in a place where most people speak Spanish, Italian, English, etc. But Tartar was interesting. Then she goes over to Italy in 1843. She spends some time there. She sang in a dozen operas over more than 2 years and became a prima donna. One of the works she performed in was called La Sonnambula. So here's where we're going to start listening to a little bit of samples of opera here. Don't worry, they're short. And for you opera people, I'm sorry, they're short. So this is a sample from that opera I was just mentioning. A non credea mirati. I pronounced that wrong. This is also a picture from a piece of sheet music showing Anna Bishop's March. That's her. I'm assuming she looks like a sleepwalker, and that's why it looks weird, because Sonnambula, sleepwalker, and it is arranged by Basha. So, here's a sample. Short, sweet, good point. These are all from the Library of Congress, except one later that I will point out, but they're all made in the 20th century. There are no recordings of Anna Bishop's voice. She died in 1884, and if she did make a recording, it does not exist, or it has not been found. From there, she goes to Switzerland in 1845, and then back to England in 1845 to 47. By way of Switzerland. She had been absent for 6 years, and she said, apart from the reputation that I had made as an artist, I had established some claims to be considered a great traveler. That's my emphasis, but it is her quote. She made, at one point, she performed at the Theatre Royal in January of 1847, and she made £600 a month. So she's doing very well for herself. And she's still traveling with Basha. She's always with Basha. But England is kind of still a little bit hot, so they say, hey, why don't we go to America? See what's going on over there. I was here 3 years before Jenny Lind thought of coming. Emphasis added. Her debut was made in an English version of Linda de Chamonix, I'm pronouncing that wrong, on August 4th, 1847 at the Park Theater in New York City. This photo here is by Matthew Brady. You might know him from the Civil War. So she made her American debut, and this gentleman had something very nice to say about her. Madame Anna Bishop more than justified all the claims of her warmest friends and admirers. As an actress, she is most perfectly equal to her part, playing with a spirit, a reality of identification rarely found in a vocalist. Her voice is one of the most pure, beautiful, and effective we have ever listened to. I think they liked her. In 1851, she and Jenny Lind performed on the same day in different venues in Buffalo, New York. Then Anna gave another performance, and then Jenny gave another performance on different days. It was that popular, and Buffalo was that happening in 1851. She then made a tour of the country, she said, appearing in all the principal cities, both in concert and opera. For several years, I repeated my visits to the chief towns annually, and even extended my journeyings to Havana and Mexico, and finally to California. So we're going back to the map, down to Havana, over to Mexico. If you go online, I need some more. If you go online to like archive.org, there is a booklet about her travels in Mexico, and it's really cute, and it has cute illustrations, so if you're looking for something additional reading afterwards, check it out. On to California in 1855. I probably should have put a star here because California is actually a bit more important than just a stopover. Anna, Basha, and their retinue boarded a ship for Australia. At the same time, a gentleman by the name of Martin Schultz was in San Francisco and looking for opportunity. He wasn't finding it in California. He thought, maybe I'll try Australia. He gets on a boat. He meets Basha and Anna, and they become fast friends. Meanwhile, back in England, Henry Bishop, who never granted Anna a divorce, finally passes away, and Anna is now a widow. They travel to Australia. Again, as the crow flies, not exactly certain how she went there, but thereabouts. They arrive in December, but they're with Basha, her friend Maria Phelan, Martin Schultz, their retinue, other performers. And unfortunately, the journey was not very kind to Basha. He was an older gentleman, again, 20 years her senior, and he wasn't very well. And unfortunately, he did pass away in January of 1856 in Australia. This is a illustration and the actual photograph, a more recent photograph of his monument in Sydney. You can see there's a harp, there's Anna, the harp has been destroyed, and Anna has been vandalized as well, unfortunately. I don't have any plans to raise money for it, but if you got some dough, they could use it.
They are working on that in Australia.
They are working on it. That is so cool. Let's hear a little bit about Basha, because he was so important to her. He wrote songs, obviously. He composed. He also he'd go into a town, he'd rent a harp. He wouldn't necessarily drag a giant harp around with him. Sometimes he did. And this woman, Carla Boss, bought one of the harps that Basha rented and was so enthusiastic about it that she performed a piece that he wrote on his harp. So we're going to hear a little sample of that. This is from carlaboss.nl or carlaboss5905 on YouTube. Sorry, it's quiet. Is there anything we can do about the volume, Tatum?
If you want me to run up and turn it up.
I'll go back so we can again. That one is really too quiet for anybody here during sound check. It didn't sound like it.
All right, try it now.
Oop.
Sarah?
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
It didn't sound like a harp, it sounded like a guitar.
If you go to carlaboss5905 at youtube.com, you can see her playing the harp. She's
Can
doing it
see
in
her
situ.
playing.
Yeah, she's sitting there. It's in the room. Yeah. It's pretty cool, but I felt like it was bad enough I used her audio without her permission. Didn't want to use her video without her permission. I know. Shush. Exactly. Shush. Okay, so we are then moving to Peru from Australia because Basha had died. It was very sad. They had a lot of period of mourning, but the show must go on. Anna cannot be stopped. She spends a season performing in Peru, then on to Chile. She crosses the Andes into Argentina, an opera singer in the 19th century with her retinue, and maybe a pianoforte, crossing the Andes. Fun. Brazil, Uruguay, big tour of South America, and then back up to England in 1858. She returned there for a brief stay in September of 1858 for the first time in 11 years. Should have had a little stand for myself. She sang in concerts at Exeter Hall, St. James Hall, and the Crystal Palace. She said, at the Grand Music Festival at the Crystal Palace, I sang Rossini's Stabat Mater to 38,000 people. She said she did. I assume she did. It's a big place. Crystal Palace was the Also, while she's in England, she ties the knot with Martin Schultz. It had been 2 years since Basha's passing, and they were fast friends. They had a lot in common. They loved to spend money together. So they got married on the 20th of December. Martin Schultz was 5 years younger than Anna. The first time she picks up a guy who's younger than she is. He was a diamond merchant and a speculator. He was originally from Rock City, Townham Island. He was a Palatine descendant, and his father, David Schultz, was originally from Rhinebeck. It was said that they made great sums of money, which the husband was handled, but Anna Bishop Schultz, like most great artists, spent her money freely, and her husband assisted her ably in the diversion. They had a good time. They went to America in 1859. They were here in September. It was 21 years after her first arrival in America, and this is where Red Hook comes into the picture officially. When she hit Red Hook, people lost their minds. All of the wealthy people in town said, "Oh my goodness, we need to form a committee. We have to have her perform this. We have to." There's an article in the paper where all of these gentlemen from Red Hook signed their names and said who is going to be responsible for what aspect of asking her politely, "Please, would you play for us somewhere, please?" Insane. She performed on the 29th of September in 1859 at the Red Hook Lutheran Church. It's not the same structure that's there at the moment. That structure's from the 1890s, but it is on the same footprint, and it's also within spitting distance of her gravesite. That night she sang a couple of songs, including Quanto Amor, John Evers My Joe, and Oft in the Stilly Night. Damn, I got it. Turn it back down. I'm gonna blow your ears out if you don't turn it down. Alright, let's try this. During soundcheck it worked okay. But now it's like, yeah. God. Sorry, technical difficulties. Sing your own little song that you want to sing for technical. Yeah. Sorry about that. You want to hear it again? No. Okay. After this, in the early days of her local performances, she would sing a lot of places locally, a lot of churches. There weren't really concert halls. Again, her first performances at a church because there wasn't a proper concert hall in Red Hook yet. They would come a bit later. They would probably be motivated to build one because they're like, oh, we should have a place for people like this if they're going to keep coming here. There was a performance she had, I forget exactly what year it was, but maybe in the first year, in Washington Hall in the Rondout District in Kingston, and it was unadvertised, but only 25 people showed up because they went, there's no way, it'd be like, oh, Swifty's playing the Rondout? No. So 25 people had a very nice show. But, after that, people figured it out that she was in town. She toured the U.S. Between 1859 and 1865. Before the war, all over the U.S., sensibly during it, only to the north and into Canada. She went at some point between 60 and 65, and she performed in Toronto for the Prince of Wales. Then got the bug again, so let's go back down to Mexico, then to Cuba, where she stopped over in Havana and performed, and then back up to New York. But, she was listless again. I think I need another world tour, she says, and she heads out to California in 1855. Or 1865, pardon me. She boards a ship and sails from California, where she gave a season of English and Italian opera before she headed out, and then she landed in... I'm not advancing? Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. One moment. It's because I messed with the audio. Did I actually turn it? No, it's on. Un momento, por favor. I don't know. Try now. Hey! This is the first time I've done one with a clicker. Did I tell you that at the beginning? I did. All right, so she went to Hawaii. She gave a series of concerts at the courthouse before the king and the royal family, and then set sail for Hong Kong. That's not Hong Kong. That's an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. You might have been spoiled for this. On the way to China, she shipwrecked and spent 3 weeks on Wake Island, which at the time was an atoll, a coral reef in the middle of nowhere, in 1866. The boat didn't get destroyed necessarily. They were able to save some of the cargo and stuff like that. They buried some of the cargo on the island. But after 3 weeks, they said, we should probably do something. We need to get out of here. There were 2 boats that were on the side of the boat that wrecked. They took them, and in a 22-foot boat, Anna Martin, their friends, their family, whatever, other passengers headed out, and the other boat headed out with some of the crew in it. This boat was never seen again. This boat arrived in China, or the Mariana Islands shortly after, 13 days later. An open boat. 22-foot boat. That's what she said. But other people were on it, so it wasn't made up. It really did happen to her. Maybe it was exaggerated, but she said the boat was but 22 feet long, and we were in it 13 days. I lost everything, including my music, but I still managed to give concerts. She's Anna Bishop, and she can't be stopped. So this is an example of what the newspaper would report.
Wow.
And then she ends up in the Marianas, and then on to China, because again, can't be stopped. Amoy, Foochow, Hong Kong, Singapore, on to India, Calcutta, Madras, Sri Lanka, or Ceylon as it was known. Back down to Australia. Once again, these people love her for a reason. She keeps coming back. Her last concert was in May of 1869 there, before she heads out to Yemen by way of Aden, Egypt. She went to Alexandria, and then back to England in July of 1869 from the Antipodes, which is one of my favorite words. It means the other side of the dang planet. And then back home. So there isn't really an event I can put here, but I want to give you another sample of a kind of song she would have been singing around the time that were advertised for her having a song. So this is Angels Ever Bright and Fair. Arrived in New York City by October of 1869 from England, probably bringing her son with her. Augustus Bishop, who came along with and was living with them in the 1860s and 70s. When she arrived, she allegedly told a reporter at the Newburgh Journal that she would never sing publicly again. She was performing in Brooklyn in 1870, in Philadelphia, and Brooklyn again. She did benefits, yada, yada, yada. She did not stop. No kidding. However, on April 22nd, 1872, her son Augustus, who was 35 years old, died of heart disease in his sleep in his room at her home on West 11th Street, New York City. He was in good health when he went to sleep that night. He just didn't wake up. It might have been a combination of this and maybe a preparation for another tour, maybe because they didn't have a lot of money. We're not sure, but on April 25th, 1873, she and Schultz auctioned off their household goods from their New York City apartment. Everything. The newspaper shows everything. Because a week later, they gave a farewell concert and she headed out for another U.S. tour and world tour. Cannot be stopped. She gave a concert at Steinway Hall in May of 1873 before going across country. She performed in Utah. 1873, there's something important that happens in Utah in 1873. Maybe only music people will know. There's a little thing called the Mormon Tabernacle. And it had been constructed earlier, but the performances had all been for church folk. This was the first public performance at the Mormon Tabernacle, and the first performer was Madam Bishop. And they said, oh, it's such a treat, we can't believe it, it was so great, and everybody had a good time. Then she goes to California and heads out on tour again, going to Hawaii, and to her beloved Australia, and then to South Africa. She performed in Cape Town, South Africa. They did a benefit for the Dutch Reformed Church in which she sang a song called Please Give Me a Penny, Sir, and the people threw change on stage. And then she got a box, scooped up the change, and sent someone into the audience to collect more donations for the church. You could just pass it, that's fine. That's fine. You don't really have to, but I can. We are accepting donations, thank you very much. Then she returned by way of England, right, in 1877, and then back to America. And you will notice here that we have 1878 to 1884, and if you are paying attention, that is the year she deceased. So we're done touring. So let's take a look at this map and the insane amount of travel this woman did. as a female guiding herself in her life and her own voyage, with men to support her because it's 1860 something, but incredible. Yeah, Jenny Lind went to America for 2 years. But we remember her. Thanks, Marta. When she returned from this final world tour, it was now well known that the Schultz bishops were struggling financially. One paper reported that at the end of 40 years of adventure, she turned up in New York, 66 years old, hearty and sound, not a dollar in her pocket, but in good spirits, and ready to sing whenever called upon. She was back in our area in the summer of '78. She gave performances at churches during their Sunday services, like the Methodist Church, St. John's Upper Red Hook. She even gave a performance at a private reception at a home here in Rhinebeck at a man named John H. Lambert's house. And at the time, they reported in the paper that although she is advanced in years, for the madam must be 70, she still retains much of the wonderful power and sweetness of her voice and sings charmingly. She sang in New York City publicly in 1882, performing such songs as Robert Toi que j'aime, I'm pronouncing that wrong, and Let the Bright Seraphim. And her final performance at Steinway Hall in New York City in 1883 was almost 142 years ago. Among the songs she performed that evening was Henry Bishop's Home Sweet Home. And we're going to hear a little sample. I may cry. I apologize. March 18, 1884, while chatting with a friend at home on 4th Avenue in New York City, she suddenly lifted her hands and cried, "Oh, my head," and then fell back insensible into her consciousness. Almost there. The Episcopal service was conducted graveside. She attended Episcopal service when she would be in town. The Red Hook Village people turned out in a body to pay a last tribute of respect. The floral display was immense. All the prominent places of business were closed in respect to the memory of the deceased while the funeral services were being conducted. And this unmarked post is the only evidence of her grave. This is probably because there was scarcely enough money left to give her a suitable burial. That's a direct quote from an article. Anna's only surviving child was the daughter Rose. She had moved to Australia. The other two children were deceased. That's probably another reason why. In 1893, the Poughkeepsie Evening Enterprise reported that the grave of Madame Anna Bishop, with worldwide reputation as a singer, is in the Red Hook Cemetery entirely unmarked. Surely the saying, "out of sight, out of mind," is fully corroborated in this case. We currently have about 90% funded for this tombstone. We have a final resting place for Madame and Riviera Bishop Schultz. So please help us remember Anna. Donate today if you can, and thank you very much. And I'll take questions.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Did her children follow her on all of these gallivanting expeditions?
Not as far as I know. No. Augustus came to live with them for a little while. I know that one of her, I think the daughter who moved to Australia, I think, came to visit with her husband at some point. It was in the paper. So they weren't necessarily totally estranged, or at least not all of them. But yeah, no, I don't think that they traveled with. Yes.
The last couple of slides had different sopranos, not Anna Bishop. So what was that about?
That is the credit to the recording that I retrieved from the Library of Congress.
Okay.
Yep.
That, and the other question is, who booked these tours and how did they do it and how did they travel?
I don't know.
What did they
That's a good
travel
question.
with?
The question is, how did they book the tours? I would assume that there would have been a network of people who were opera people, and you would know which venue to go to and who to talk to, and they, cable ahead, right ahead, because people knew they were coming. Like when she performed in Salt Lake, there was posts in the paper for days like she's coming, she's coming. They knew that she was coming. She didn't just show up and go, hey, you guys bought for me? But yeah, it's probably a remarkable feat of it. Yes?
I have a suggestion. It was probably due to the newspapers. They would let newspapers know
Yeah.
their itinerary, where they were coming, etc.
Yeah.
That's long before we had anything that was called an internet.
There you go.
But how did
Newspaper
they
got it
book
right.
the hall they were going to perform in?
You get a hold of the newspaper, you get a hold of people in the town you're going to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense, because the
That's the way
newspaper,
they-
the newspaper people would know
they write
everybody
letters.
and be able to direct them.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Ellen.
Sarah, if it's unmarked,
Yes.
how did you discover it?
Ooh, that's a good question. If the grave is unmarked, how was it discovered? You'll see here we've got a view of it where you've got, that's the end of it. There we go. So here you can see, this is the mock-up we're going to do. There's a broken stone here and this stone here. And then you can see a little bit of a stone here. This is Augustus's stone. It was known that she was buried with her son Augustus. We kept looking, I shouldn't say we, Bonnie Wood, my co-chair for this project, and really the impetus of this whole project, she was looking for this grave because she's doing a report for Rhinebeck Historical Society. And she kept looking, she got, I can't find it. We went all over the cemetery, we couldn't find it because Augustus' stone was broken and off to its side. So unless you went like this, you couldn't see it was Augustus. But once we did, we kind of, she looked a little bit harder and found it. The stone next to it is a Berenger tombstone because the Berengers and the Schultzes were related. So we think that this plot was owned either by the Schultzes or by the Berengers, and they let them be buried in their plot. It did take some doing to find it, and boy, the call I got from Bonnie when she found it, oh my gosh, that was pretty cool. Yeah, just Thea.
Can you, I know that you and Bonnie took a really long time to find it. So can you tell the story about when I texted you when we found the files at the...
Yeah, some of you in the audience may know I'm Clara Losey's granddaughter. If you know who she was, you know she's a researcher. I'm doing all this work on it, and Thea and Claudine and a bunch of other people are at town hall, and Thea texts me and goes, hey, do you know your grandmother's got a whole file on Anna Bishop in the town hall? Like, yeah, that sounds right. So a lot of interesting clippings and whatnot.
And then the other thing that was in there was a Polaroid of Anna Bishop.
Yes.
And she had found her...
Yep. Yeah, there's a Polaroid of the grave we were looking for. I don't know if I could have triangulated from the Polaroid though. Yes, ma'am.
When the concert hall was composed,
Yes.
when were the words added?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to. I'm more of a history person, not an opera person. But I do know that Bishop did the composition. The words were done by somebody else later. Yeah, I don't know if it was at the exact same time or if that composition was heard without lyrics beforehand. I actually don't know the answer to that. But yeah. With the mask.
Why was the son in Red Hook? How did he end up there?
Because he was visiting them and living with them in 1872 when he died in New York City. And so they needed a place to inter him. They didn't send him back home. He might have been permanently living with them at that point.
Okay, and then my second question is, if she was playing all these huge venues, why would she come to a small town and play a church?
Good question.
How did that happen?
Martin Schultz was originally from the town of Milan. I am pronouncing that correctly. And so he would come up from the city in the summer to visit his family, and he brought his wife with him. So they would summer here, and like I said, that first, September wasn't really a summer, but it was the first time they visited, and when people found out they lost their minds.
Right.
Yeah. She just was like, oh, it's down the road, there's a church, and people want to hear me sing. Can't stop Anna. Any other? Yeah, again.
So where is her husband buried?
Oh, good question. Poor Martin. We don't know. Probably, sadly, Hart Island in New York City. Raise your hand if you know what Hart Island is. All right, for those of you who don't know, that's where they buried the paupers in New York City. If you died on North Brother Island because you were secluded because you had typhus or typhoid, I think it was he contracted typhus in 1893 after he was knocked down by a horse and broke his shoulder. That we do know. And he perished in the hospital, and no one came to claim the body, and they buried him somewhere. The family knew he was out and about. He kind of went, I'm fine. We want to help you. He's like, yeah, I'm okay. And he wasn't living very well. Who knows what's going through his mind? We all have somebody like that in our family. We go, but Mom. Any other questions? I think I saw one in the back before.
Same question.
Same question. It was already answered.
The
Yes.
Opera House it's a restaurant down the Strand. I used to live on the Strand, the Rondout.
Oh yeah.
It's called the Opera House. It's a restaurant, but
You suppose it's the same venue?
I wonder.
Yeah. Could be.
I know that Oscar Wilde stopped there.
And it could
Before
very
he
well
went up
be.
to the Catskill Mountains.
Very cool.
It's still called the Opera House.
And, then opera was also a bit more popular back then, so there might have been more than one place, more than one venue. Kingston was happening back then.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I thank you so much. Please donate if you can.
So our next program will be on Friday, May 23rd at Lasting Joy Brewery, back up in Tivoli, where we will resume our tales of revolutionary Dutchess.